I have another 35 years I'm going to work. So why am I doing the same thing if it's making me unhappy? And I remember that just made it very clear to me. And I was like, he's right. Like, this is it. I get this one shot. I'm clearly not happy and I deserve to be happy. So I'm going to go and try to find something that makes me happy.
This is the Building a Lifestyle Business Podcast, where we inspire solopreneurs like you to win back your life by teaching you how to build businesses that maximize your freedom, flexibility, and income, all without trading time for money. Here's your host, Nick Murphy.
Hey there, my friend, and welcome to the Building a Lifestyle Business Podcast. My name is Nick Murphy, and I'm honored to be your host. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you're a frequent listener, you know I love you. Thanks for checking out yet another episode of the podcast. And if you're a new listener, I'm really excited that you're here. And listen, I'm going to do everything I can in the next 35, 40 minutes or so to pack in so much value that you won't feel that you have any other choice but to press subscribe on whichever app you're using right now so that you can come back each and every week. And when you do come back, my goal, as always, is to inspire you to get in the game by showing you how to create your very own lifestyle business. Or if you're already in the game, how to attract more customers, make more money, and free up more time so that you can live life on your terms. That's what I'm all about. If that's you, you're going to want to stay tuned. Today's guest is Goli Kalkhoran, and in our conversation, Goli and I discuss what made her walk away from a successful career as an attorney, what her business looks like today, and she shares some great advice for any new or aspiring lifestyle business owners. I won't make you wait any longer, so just sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Goli Kalkhoran. My guest today is Goli Kalkhoran. Goli is a lawyer turned entrepreneur, which is a fancy way of saying she quit practicing law, did a lot of soul searching, tried a bunch of different stuff, and happened upon an idea that she turned into a business. She's now the founder of Usie Booth, a company that provides a unique, modern approach to photo booths. Goli also has a podcast called Lessons from a Quitter. If you haven't heard that, check it out. It's amazing. And on that show, she interviews inspiring guests, about how they quit lucrative careers to forge their own paths and create a life they love. Goli, my friend, good to have you back. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm good. How are you?
I am doing awesome. I appreciate you taking time out of the Usie Booth schedule and your incredibly successful podcast to chat with me. So I want to focus really the majority of our conversation kind of on not just why you left the world of law, but really what you've done since then and kind of really dig into that journey. I think that's on this show. That's really where I want to make sure that I'm pulling things out of guests and through stories like yours and through successes like yours. People might be able to reflect a little bit and say, oh, if Goli can do it, maybe I can do it. And if Nick can do it, maybe I can do it. And really tap into that entrepreneurship kind of vein that you and I both have. So before we get too far into it, once upon a time, you were a lawyer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so you went to UC Berkeley Law and then on to a big law firm. And from the outside, you really had it made at that point. But what was going on in your life and kind of in your heart during that time that led you to feel like something was missing?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people actually that focus on getting to a certain end goal, that have something that they keep working towards. For me, that was law. I spent my whole life really just focused on that goal. And I went to school and college and then law school, really never questioning it. And then you get to this thing where you think, like you said, like you'll have it made, you're successful, like everything is great. And you get there and it's not what you thought it was going to be, and I found myself in that position on the outside. Everything looked wonderful. I was, quote unquote, successful. I had gone to a great law school, but on the inside, I just really hated like my day to day. I hated what I was doing. I didn't find, there were certain parts, like you said, I was at a big law firm and then I became a federal public defender. So I was very passionate about that cause, but it didn't fit with my personality. I was spending these really long hours alone behind a computer working on motions that I didn't want to be working on. And I felt very stuck and my identity had been kind of wrapped up into being a lawyer. And I felt like, okay, I'm miserable, but this is it. Like, this is what I have to do. And so I think that compounded it, kind of this feeling of stuckness, like no matter what, I have to stay here. I don't know, it makes it worse. And so I was finding myself extremely unhappy because I just didn't find fulfillment in the work I was doing.
There's a bit of this sunk cost fallacy where, especially somebody like you had prepared for law school your whole life. Basically, you knew you wanted to do it from an early age. You did what you needed to do in undergrad. You get into Berkeley Law, you get out, you get the job. How much pushback did you get kind of in your conversations? I'm assuming before you made the leap, you might have vented a little bit to some friends or family and kind of been like, I'm considering getting out of this. It's not working. What was that pushback like, and kind of how'd you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, you get a ton of it. I actually, and on my podcast, I talk to a lot of people, and it's funny how a lot of people tend to like keep it to themselves until you're really ready. And I did too. I'm glad I did. I mean, it took me about a year to really admit it, even to myself. And so once I was ready to tell people and I got pushback, I didn't care as much because I was like, I've made my decision and I've gone through all of the, how can you leave? And is this crazy? And can you ever find another job? And are you ruining everything? But you said, I mean, there's a huge sunk cost fallacy of I've spent this much time and money and energy. I've worked this hard to get to this place. Like, how am I going to walk away from all this? Am I going to throw it all away? And I got a lot of that afterwards. I got a lot of well-meaning family and friends saying like, are you crazy? You're going to walk away from this successful career. Like, you're making a huge mistake. You're going to regret it. But like I said, I mean, luckily I had my husband's support, and I really think you need like one supportive person, and that's really all you need so you can have like a sounding board so that when I would start doubting it, I could go back to him and he would be like, no, you were miserable. There's no point in spending the rest of your life doing something that you hate. And that's sort of helps me kind of combat other people's opinions. And then it's also like once you get to the point where you realize like people are just doing it out of their own fears, and like it has nothing to do with you. Like it was surprising to me that people cared so much what I did with my life when like it didn't affect them at all. And once you start putting that in perspective, it makes it easier to handle those conversations.
I'm just curious to ask you, like now in hindsight, having made the move, and we'll talk a lot about kind of what you do day to day and some advice for those aspiring or early stage solopreneurs here in a bit. But now that you've done that, now that you've been through it, why is it, especially the people that you've talked to on your show, it's really about quitting, right? And how to do that. Why do people whose lives are not impacted by your decision take such a passionate approach to making sure that their opinion or they let you know what they think about your decision? Have you, in all of your conversations with your podcast guests and now looking back, have you kind of like, what is it about us that makes us so wrapped up in other people's stuff?
I think there's two different reasons. One, and I think people closest to you really do want the best for you. They're worried about you. And we've all been so programmed to think that there's one right way and that like stability comes from, being in these careers. And so they're worried that like you might be making a decision that will affect the rest of your life and whether you can make money and whatever. And so underlying most people, I think close to you, is that they love you and they want you to be safe. But the bigger thing, and I think other people, is just their own fears. And a lot of times it's that they can't even, dream of the fact of leaving like their own career or doing something that they love. And so I don't want to say that they're resentful. I don't think people are like most people. Some people might be, but I think they have bought into those fears so much that like you have to do it this way. And, life isn't fun and games and you can't just do whatever, brings you joy. You have to make money and work is hard and all these other things that we've all been told a million times. And it's sort of threatening when you're going against that. It's sort of like, I just think most people can't understand because they can't work past that fear that like, how are you pushing past that? Or how are you kind of going against this norm? I mean, we all are like by evolution, we're like meant to be in these tribes and communities and follow rules and laws. And that's how we evolved. And that's how our civilization is based off of. And so I think when you start kind of going against what is the norm, people have a really hard time because that's not what they do. And they want everyone to kind of be like them.
It is amazing just the boldness that you have if you're willing to kind of draw that line in the sand and say, you know what, this is cool for you, but it's not for me anymore. And you're willing to put that out there and kind of declare that to anybody that'll listen and go out and do it your way. That boldness offends people. And it just does. I think it's something that you have to accept if you're going to be successful.
But it's also really funny to me now looking back because I always get like a lot of people would say to me like, oh my God, you're so brave, or it was so courageous. And then when you think about it, like when you actually distill it, like it's laughable to me, like to think like, you're saying I'm courageous for saying I don't like something and trying something else. Like that's so ludicrous, And it's like there's actually courageous people that are doing like incredibly hard things. And like, I was just saying that I don't like this, but that's how ingrained like going with what society thinks you should be doing is, that other people that look at that and say like, hey, you stood against what other people thought and did it anyways, is looked at as like an act of bravery. So it is very deeply ingrained in us, like to be a certain way.
We are insanely deeply conditioned and we don't always realize it until we think about it. So if you had to pinpoint one thing that was missing that really, what was that final straw? If you remember a moment or a thought or a conversation that really drove you out of law for good and into entrepreneurship, what was it?
It was definitely, I think, a conversation I had with my husband when I had, I was teetering. I knew we'd already talked about me. He had been kind of pushing me to leave, and had been really reluctant because of all of my fear. And I remember really worrying about what other people were going to say. And like, if I looked like I just couldn't handle it as a lawyer, I couldn't hack it. And I remember like saying, again, this sunk cost fallacy and all this stuff, and telling him like, how can I, I've put in all this time, and what is everyone going to say? And I remember he said to me like, do you know how insane you sound? Like, you want to keep doing something for the next 30 or 40 years of your life because you're worried about what other people that don't have to go into that office with you, like, think about what you're doing. Like, that's insanity. And when he said it like that, it really was just like this click. Like, he's so right. I keep saying I spent all this time, but it's like, why waste the rest of my time? Like, okay, I spent 10 years, 20 years. Like, I have another 35 years I'm going to work. So why am I doing the same thing if it's making me unhappy? And I remember that just made it very clear to me. And I was like, he's right. Like, this is it. Like, I get this one shot. I'm clearly not happy and I deserve to be happy. So I'm going to go and try to find something that makes me happy.
One of the elephants in the room, I think, that people don't talk a lot about is okay, you've made this decision, you've come to terms with, I'm going to go live the life I want to live, and to hell with everybody else. And you get to a place where you're confident in that. And that's a very difficult journey and a hard place to be. But then there's the logistics. And obviously you're married, you had a dual income. What kind of plan did you put in place? Was it something you went in and did right away? Just talk us through the logistics of, okay, I've decided to actually exiting, and then I want to go from exit to kind of what was next.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I didn't have a plan, and I don't necessarily recommend this. I was sort of in a place where I didn't have a job at the time because I had my son. I went out on a maternity leave, and on my maternity leave, we moved from Arizona to California. So I had to quit my job in Arizona. And so I found myself in a place where I didn't have a job. And I started going through this kind of self-discovery period and really made that decision then. And so I was at home with a new baby, and I wanted to spend some more time with the baby. And you're right, like we could make it work on my husband's income. And so at the time when I was making all these big decisions, I also was like frantically trying to figure out what I was going to do next. I mean, I did everything. I looked at every possible job that, I could transfer my skills as a lawyer to. I applied to, I don't even know how many jobs. I really started like making lists and figuring out what it is I like doing and reading all these like career transition books. And I started going to meetup groups. I was just doing everything to desperately find, and I wanted to find like what the right path is. And, I was so used to like having a goal and just working for it that I felt very lost in that process. A lot of things happened. It took me a good couple of months, and I ended up going to a lot of meetups. I started getting really interested in like the startup community. I had never considered entrepreneurship before. I never thought I would own a business. I never thought I knew how to. I was always really intimidated by it. And just by putting myself out there, going through this process, I had gone to a number of tech startup events, and I started becoming very interested in like the tech scene in Orange County. I started meeting a bunch of people. Just very organically, this idea for this photo booth business came up because I was trying to also make a photo booth for my son's first birthday. It was coming up at that time, like a couple months out. And so this all kind of culminated in me figuring out this business. Like, there wasn't a plan. It wasn't something that I wish I could say like I knew I was going to do, and I was, wanted to open a business, or it was like one thing led me to the next. And then it ultimately led me to creating Usie Booth.
I want to dig into that thing that you just said about feeling intimidated, like you didn't know. So here's somebody who's highly successful at school, who's checked all the boxes, who's obviously above average intelligence, who goes to Berkeley Law, graduates, gets a big law firm job, and yet you still had this self-doubt about your ability to figure out how to run a business. I think there's a lot of people that feel that way, who are accomplished in so many ways and don't give themselves credit. What would you say to somebody like that, and kind of how do you feel now going through it, looking back at that fear and one using that reason? I'm sure there's a lot, but that's one reason why maybe this was not something you immediately set out to do or thought you were going to be comfortable doing?
I would say the biggest thing I've learned, and the biggest thing I've learned from talking to every one of my guests, is that nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody. It doesn't matter in what.
Don't give it away. Don't say that. Jeez.
It's so liberating once you learn that, it frees you up to so many things. Because as I went through each step through this process, what I've learned is I just now have confidence in myself that I will figure it out. That's it. It's not that I'll know it. I don't know many things. Everything I'm doing now with the podcast, with the business, each step is new. And I just have more of like a calmness that, okay, this is the next hurdle and I'll figure this out. Whereas in the beginning, I was very terrified and thought I was lacking something and like, who am I? And everybody has that too. Everybody has imposter syndrome. And especially if you're doing something new, because you've never done it before, we all think we need to have a degree or we need to be further along than we are. And once you realize that everybody is just figuring out as they go and you just put one step in front of the other and figure it out and know that you will figure it out. You're smart enough to figure it out. You're just as capable. It really takes some of the pressure off to try to have everything buttoned up.
I say it all the time and you said it again. And I wish I could, you kind of just want to be able to give somebody, I don't know about you, but like, I can't help people see what they can't see. But I say all the time, like, you won't see the way the path's going to unfold until you start the journey. If you don't start, you won't see the thing. It's so, so important, guys. So if you're on the fence and you're listening to this episode, like, just know that you're not alone. Like, you are never going to figure it all out before you start. And while you're going down the path, there's going to be things that you've never even thought of that you're going to have to figure out on the fly. And that, I think, for me at least, is the most exciting part about being an entrepreneur. What do you say?
Absolutely. I mean, it could be, I don't know if it's the most exciting part because I still can get overwhelmed by it, but there's no way around it. If you're waiting for that, like if you're waiting for a time where everything is going to be figured out for you and it's going to be this wonderful path laid out, you'll never make the jump. You will never start. You'll never do it because there's always something to learn. There's always something that you're not going to have the time to get to. You just have to like go with what you have and make it work as you go along. And I agree with you. I mean, literally, that's the theme that comes up in every episode that I have is everyone's like path is so windy. It's not a straight thing. And if you'll never know where it's going to lead you until you start actually doing it. And I think too often, like we just want that path laid out. And unfortunately, especially in entrepreneurship, it's just not. So you got to be okay with that and take the leap anyway.
That probably is one of the biggest shifts I think people make. You know, it's not linear. And when we are raised in a society that's like, hey, go to school, work hard, graduate, get a job, and go to work. Like, there's really nothing to it. Like, that's a very linear plan. And entrepreneurship is just not. And so being able to be comfortable with discomfort is something that really means a lot. So you make this leap, you decide, you somehow decide you want to go be an entrepreneur. Tell us a little bit more about your day-to-day business at Usie Booth and also what you do with the podcast today.
Basically, Usie Booth now, again, like what we said, it's changed in the last 3 years. It's gone through so many iterations because, like I said, I really have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, I do to a certain extent, but I'm constantly changing the business model and seeing what works and seeing where we can put these booths. And I'm talking to different vendors. And so it's a constant iteration. At this point, we do rentals in Orange County and Los Angeles. We also lease them long-term to stores and businesses across the country. And I also manufacture and sell the booths. So there, day to day is a lot of different things. It depends on if I have, I take care of the rentals and figure out graphics. And then I'm constantly working with my software team and manufacturing and figuring out how to get a better case. And, so there's kind of a lot that goes on. And that's one of the best parts of entrepreneurship is that like no 2 days are the same. You're just constantly figuring out what needs fixing and then, working on that and learning marketing and learning manufacturing at the same time. So it's kind of all over the place, but very exciting. And the podcast, we started about 9 months ago, and it comes out every Tuesday. And like you said, I interview somebody that's jumped from a traditional career. It's a lot of people that have spent tons of time either climbing the corporate ladder or getting these advanced degrees and then finding themselves unhappy. And they, take that scary leap and they go on to do incredible things and start finding fulfillment in their work. And so it's called Lessons from a Quitter. You can find it really anywhere. That's been super fun. And that also takes up a lot more time, as you know now, than that I thought it would, but just like planning it out and doing the interviews and editing and all that stuff in marketing. But it's been such a cool experience, like connecting with the people, like listeners and people that have found the podcast and resonate with it, that it's just been like the best experience.
That's the platform that you chose. Obviously the one that I chose, one of the ones that I've chosen. Everyone needs a platform. If you're going to go start a business of any kind, you're going to need a platform to tell your story. What have you learned kind of about crafting your message and using a platform and your podcast to strategically, like there's a reason to go out and just do it and have the experience. But what have you learned now that you're a good chunk of episodes down the road in terms of a platform? What advice would you have for somebody that's like, oh, well, I kind of like podcasting. Maybe I'll do that when I start my business.
My biggest advice would be find a platform that naturally appeals to you. Like one of the reasons I used to listen to tons of podcasts. The reason it was like a no-brainer to me is because clearly I like to talk. And I really love talking to people. And I wanted to kind of like showcase these stories. I could have also started a YouTube channel, but I don't feel as comfortable with video. It's not something I didn't want to have to worry about getting ready and having the lighting. And I don't know video editing stuff. And so it seemed too daunting to me. And I really wanted to start, maybe at some point I'll do YouTube. But for now, it's like podcasting seemed the easiest. Now, if you don't like talking to people or if, that's draining for you or you think, then maybe podcasting is not going to be your medium. Maybe blogging, writing is better for you or whatever it might be. I would say because it is a ton of work, you have to be consistent. You have to put stuff out there. I would say find something that you enjoy doing because on those, like when it's very difficult, that's what keeps you going. Beyond that though, it's incredible how much faster and for free, you're getting your message out there and how many people like find me all over the world. I have people, I don't even know how many countries that listen. I get messages every day on Instagram or my email or to the website. It blows my mind, and it's not like I'm doing, I guess you could do paid marketing and all that stuff. But what these platforms do is just, it really humanizes you to your audience and they get to know you in a different way. And that creates such a level of trust and bond that I don't know the statistics, but there's all types of statistics about how much that helps with sales and with your business and just getting people to trust you want people to know, like, and trust you. And this is one of the fastest ways is kind of letting them in weekly into your world or like having them come along for conversations. It's a great tool to get yourself out there.
No, I totally agree. It also doesn't hurt to be very authentic and really damn good as a host. And you are both those things. That's why you're crushing it.
That's very kind of you.
All right. So in your Usie Booth journey so far with the podcast, what's been the highest high? What's been just that, if there's a day or a moment where you're like, this is what it's all about? Just describe that for us.
Sure. I would say that probably like that kind of high came more with the podcast just because like I remember putting it out there and I was so terrified to put it out there. And when I did, I had so many people reach out to me. I mean, it was completely overwhelming in the best way possible that like people resonated with the story and people connected with me. And still to this day, when I get messages and people like randomly find me and I get these like emails of like, oh my God, I'm, stuck in this career that I hate. And I thought I was crazy and I found your podcast and it makes me just like really realize that I'm on this right track and I am okay for wanting to leave. And I'm so grateful for you for doing this. I mean, that's just like the best feeling on earth ever. And like, I feel like I chase that constantly because I love just sharing my own truth and my own journey can help someone else feel like they don't have to spend their time doing something they hate for the rest of their life. It's just been the coolest feeling ever.
That is awesome. We talk a lot about, and everybody has a highlight reel, it seems, on social media out there these days. We talk a lot about the upside. I talk a ton about what's in it for you if you go and build a lifestyle business, but it's not easy, guys. So Goli, what's been the lowest point in your business and how did you push through that?
This is something I continuously push through. There's a lot of times where, and it honestly could be on the same day that you're having a high of highs, where like you just get to the point where you're like, why am I doing this? What am I doing? It's too hard. It's too much. It's too much work. You don't see the results that you want, or it seems like it's going at a snail's pace. And there's definitely been times where I've just been at a point where I want to throw my hands up and say like, I don't want to do this anymore, both with the podcast and with Usie Booth, multiple times where I want to walk away because it's so much harder than I thought it was going to be. But I think like knowing why you're doing it and having a reason, like I just really go back to like what I love about it. I constantly remind myself that helps me kind of push through that. Another thing I will say too, just as advice, because one of the lows I think for me, I realize I get into a really low place is that you tend to work a lot alone and it can be a very lonely existence, like doing this entrepreneurship journey. And so I have found that when I'm working alone a lot, your mind goes unchecked and you just keep like thinking of the bad stuff. So I just really try to build in going to tons of live events and conferences and meetups. And every time I go to those, I'm like on the highest high. I love meeting other like-minded people. And it really solidifies and like reminds me why I'm doing it and that I'm on the right path. And so that's just been a trick that I've realized for myself that like I kind of have to get out from behind my computer and I have to go meet people and talk to them and commiserate over like all of the bad stuff and all the good stuff with entrepreneurship. And that kind of helps me out of those lows.
No, I love that. It took me a while to figure that out too. And just, you really need to be self-aware enough to understand what it is that gives you energy, because there's going to be things you have to sit down and do, whether it's creating products for the first time or dealing with manufacturing and logistics or chasing invoices, the non-sexy part of entrepreneurship, the non-fun part, the lonely part, the part that's just frustrating and maddening. And especially if you're a solopreneur and you don't have a team or a VA, like you're chasing these things yourself. So if you feel yourself getting pulled into that place, just kind of pinch yourself, be like, all right, you need to go do the thing that gives you energy. And I'm the same way as you. Like when I do these podcasts, I'm always way more up at the end of taping for a day than I am just kind of sitting around doing the mundane stuff or building a course or doing marketing online kind of alone in my computer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once you know that about yourself, then you really have to make it a priority. And it's hard. There's never enough hours in a day and you're always trying to do everything. So it's easy to say like, oh, I don't have time to go to a meetup. I'm just going to sit and finish this course that I've been working on. But the amount of energy and motivation you get from like leaving the house and just doing something for an hour is, I feel like, worth every minute of it.
100%. And your product's going to be better too. When you create it from a place of energy and passion and you remember why you did it, your product's going to be better. You're going to serve more people in a better way. And just being self-aware, that's really important. All right, Goli, we play a little game called Rapid Fire here on the podcast. And Rapid Fire is brought to you by Podigy. I don't know, Goli, it sounds like you might do your own editing. I sure as heck don't. I hire the guys over at Podigy. They do my timestamps, my show notes, the whole deal. I hit record and end and upload it to Drive, and I get kicked back a beautiful MP3 and show notes that I think are the best in the business. So if you're a podcaster or aspiring podcaster, go ahead and check out Podigy. Let them know I sent you. And Goli, are you ready to play Rapid Fire?
Let's do it.
All right. What do you think about when you're alone in your car?
The millions of things I have to get done between the kids and the businesses.
What's your advice for your previous boss?
The power trip is not a good look.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
I'm still figuring that out every day. I have no idea.
What inspires you?
Creating a life that is on my own terms and living the way that I want to live every day is really what I strive for.
What is your biggest fear?
Giving in to what other people think and doing things, going back to kind of a life where I do things not because I want to, but because I'm so beholden to other people's opinions.
Who do you admire the most?
My mom. She's literally the strongest, best role model I could have ever had in my life. And I am always striving to be more like her.
Which celebrity annoys you the most?
Oh God, so many. I don't even watch TV anymore because all the reality TV people, but the Kardashians up there, anybody that gets paid to fight on TV is pretty annoying.
How do you define success?
Again, living the way you want to, being able to do what you want on a daily basis, even if it's not fun, it's not all going to be fun, but at least you're choosing to do what you want to do.
All right, last one. You get to share a drink or a meal with anyone in history, dead or alive. Who is it and why?
I would have to say right now it would be Barack or Michelle Obama. I would love to just chat with them about their experience and what they think of everything happening right now.
All right, Goli, you survived rapid fire. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Looking back kind of on your journey, is there anything you go back and do differently if you were getting started today based on something that you've learned maybe since you got started that you just didn't know at the time?
Yeah, actually, one thing I would say, and I would give anybody advice is I really felt like even with Usie Booth, I was so frantic to find something. And I'm glad I got started. Don't get me wrong. I think that you're never going to find that perfect thing. I'm glad I got started with what I did. But if I was going to do it over, I would say be way more intentional and aligned about what kind of a business you want. Like think about not just like the thing that you're doing, but what kind of hours do you want to be working? Do you want do you want to build something that's going to be large, or do you want to keep it small? And that's okay. Like a lot of times we get so focused on money as a barometer, like I have to be 6 figures or 7 figures or whatever. But maybe that's not even what you need in your life. Maybe you just need something that's way more flexible so you can spend more time with your kids or going traveling or whatever. So I just wish I was more intentional about when I started with like what it is I want to create and kind of have that as my guiding post with what I do with my businesses.
That is amazing advice. And for the listeners that have been out there just picking up what you're putting down, that want to connect with you more closely online, that want to follow your podcast, where can we go to find that?
It's Lessons from a Quitter on pretty much anywhere like iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, wherever you're listening to this podcast, you can find me. Or you can go to lessonsfromaquitter.com. And I'm most active on Instagram at Lessons from a Quitter.
All right, Goli, as always, it's a pleasure chatting with you, my friend, and just really inspiring stuff and a really, really good, relatable story. Not everybody's Berkeley law and comes from that, level, I guess, but it's always inspiring for me to hear people's stories and not just why they quit, but when they got started, all the things that we struggle with, that we go through. So I really appreciate you taking time to come on and be so authentic and open with us.
Well, thanks so much, Nick. That means a lot to me. And thank you for putting this platform out there and helping so many people create that dream life that, they can have if they're just willing to put themselves out there.
And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Goli. Listen, it comes up time and time again in these interviews, but I really can't stress enough just how important it is to take that first step. I know it's hard. I know it's scary. I know it's super uncomfortable. But trust me, all those answers that you're looking for are on the other side of that action to just get in the game and get started. So if there's anything holding you back, just know that you're not the first person, you're not the last person to ever feel that anxiety, to ever stagnate because you're not sure what the future holds. But I implore you, you heard it from Goli, you'll hear it from me each and every week. Just take that first action and you would be amazed the answers that come to you and how that path unfolds. But like we said in the episode, if you don't start, you'll never know. If you've enjoyed this episode, I invite you to subscribe, rate, and review it on iTunes, whichever app you use to listen to your podcasts. I read each and every review, and in addition to just talking directly to me and letting me know how I'm doing and what you enjoy about the episodes, it's a great opportunity, just that process of subscribing, rating, and reviewing signals to iTunes that this podcast is something that people actually listen to, and that triggers some of the secret applesauce that allows them to promote the show and show it to more people that are perusing podcasts in this category. That's how shows get discovered. So if you didn't know that, there's a little inside tip about podcasts, which is why me and probably every other host you've ever heard are asking you to do the same thing. I definitely want the feedback. And in addition, you're going to help me inspire and reach other people that want to hear our content. All right, that's it for me this week. But as always, I want to remind you, trading time for money is no way to live. You deserve to live life on your terms, and building a lifestyle business is the fastest, safest, and best way to do just that. I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to talking to you very soon. Take care, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Building a Lifestyle Business Podcast. To access the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.nickmurphy.io.